Hello, this is Ben with the Green Hill and another Come Follow Me message. This week we're in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. And there's a lot of cool things that we could talk about this week. We could talk about the importance of building temples and attending the temple. We could talk about faith, repentance, the necessity and the importance of marrying inside the covenant. A lot of great things we could talk about, but what really touched me was this idea of being moved upon by the Spirit. So, starting out in Ezra, it's been 70 years since the kingdom of Judah has been conquered and their temple has been destroyed by the Babylonians. And since that time, Babylon has actually been taken over by Persia. And the Lord starts to work with the people to have them have this united feeling of returning to Jerusalem and rebuilding the temple. In fact, he starts making pathways for this to happen. Starting right off in chapter 1, verse 1 of the book of Ezra, it says, "Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom." So the Lord is working with the king, stirring up his heart so that he can make this proclamation that the Jews can return and build the temple. In verse 5 we read, "Then rose up the chief of the fathers of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, with all them whose spirit God had raised, to go to build the house of the Lord, which is in Jerusalem." So the Jews are feeling this collective spirit that they need to return home and rebuild the Lord's house. And when I was thinking of this, I was thinking, when the Lord moves upon a large group of people to unify them in a common goal or a common cause. And what came to my mind was the pioneers. We talk about that pioneer spirit. These people that had this great prompting, this great desire to move to America and to unite themselves with the saints. And this spirit that gave them the strength to leave their homes, to trek across America and to make it out west to Utah and to be with the saints. And also that willingness to pass through anything. No matter what trial came their way, they would sing, all is well. And, that goal to be acquainted with God so that they could do His will. And they knew that at that time, His will was for them to be with the saints. When I was thinking about this, a couple things came to my mind. My grandma used to tell us the story of our ancestors. And in Europe, they learned about the gospel, they knew it was true, and they decided to become baptized. It was this sweetheart couple, and in doing so, they were basically disowned from their family. And so they write in their journal about sitting on the hill, looking down upon their home and their town, and knowing that this would be the last time that they would see their families and their home and their town again. And yet they moved forward with faith and boarded a ship to America. And with very little in their pockets as way of money, they made their way to unite themselves with the saints. And also after my mission, I had the cool opportunity to go and be a chaperone on a trek. And we went to Martin's Cove. And there we learned about some amazing stories. We saw these trees that had been chopped down, and they think that these were the trees where, a young pioneer basically wanted to lay down and go to sleep and freeze and never wake up again. And the captain said, "That's fine, but you're in charge of firewood and you have to do your duty first." And, that faith and obedience to fulfill the captain's desires, going and chopping down these trees, ultimately heated up their bodies and saved them. And then we learned about the rescue crew that came, and there's this story of Agnes. She was a young girl that when the rescue party came, she really wanted to ride upon the wagon. And so her and a lot of the other youth, they were walking fast and running alongside the wagon for what seemed to them forever. And young kids kept falling off, not being able to keep up with the wagon, but Agnes kept with it. And finally, the driver, it was William Henry Heber Kimball, he said to her, "Hey, sissy, you want to ride on the wagon?" And she was like, "Yes, I want to so bad." And so he reached down, grabbed her wrist, and basically clucked to his horses to get the horses to start running. And making Agnes run alongside while holding her wrist. And she just felt that this was the meanest man in the world. All sorts of mean words were running through her head about this man. And then what seemed like forever for her, finally the team driver stopped. He picked her up, wrapped her in a warm blanket, and laid her in the wagon. And then as she sat there and realized that her body had heated up, she realized what this man had done for her. When we were doing that little trek, we were able to cross the Sweetwater. And for us, what was a fun activity, because it was hot summer, we in fact trekked up the river a ways. This was a dire straits, life or death crossing for these pioneers of the William Martin Handcart Company. And it's told the story of these three youth that spent hours upon hours in the water carrying the pioneers across. And when Brigham Young learned of what they had done, it said that he cried like a baby. And he said that act alone will grant these young men passage to the celestial kingdom. So wonderful examples of faith, whatever it took to become acquainted with God. I love the quote from, in fact, I'll just read it here for you. It said, "Was I sorry that I chose to come by handcart? No, neither then nor any minute of my life since. The price we paid to become acquainted with God was a privilege to pay, and I am thankful that I was privileged to come in the Martin Handcart Company." So, in thinking of this Spirit, I thought, what are we moved on today? What is the Spirit telling us to do? Well, this is, my nephew Austin. He's serving a mission in Brazil, and the Spirit obviously moved upon him that he should serve the Lord and serve a mission. Let me share with you our cousin Heidi and what the Spirit told her to do. This is her account.
Hi, Andersons. Your dad asked me to send you a video of how I decided to go on a mission, and it's kind of a crazy story, so if you want to know more, let me know. But basically I was going to state conference, and I called my dad because I was going by myself, and I just wanted a little bit of credit, so I called him. I was like, "You better be proud of me, I'm going to state conference." And I was feeling a little homesick, so I felt like state conference was going to help lift my spirits, especially because my dad used to speak in all of my state conferences. And he said, "That's good, but you better go with a question." And I brushed that off. I was like, "Okay, sure, let's go with a question." I never thought of a question. But on the walk to state conference, a question popped into my mind, and that question was, how can I better align my life with God? And that was a pretty random question, especially for me, because I probably would have never thought of that on my own. And as I was sitting in state conference, they were talking about ministering. And that's not really related to missions, but there were 3 talks that stood out to me. The first one was when a girl was having a hard time in her life. She prayed and asked God what she needed to do to feel better, and God said, serve others. Another one was a guy referencing a conference talk where this neighbor kept knocking on his other neighbor's door, inviting him to church and church activities, and every time he said no. And then the roof of the meeting house actually got damaged from a rain and thunderstorm. And that same neighbor was getting volunteers to help repair the roof, and he passed by that one neighbor's house because he was like, we have to get this done. I don't want to waste my time. But eventually he got the prompting to go back to that neighbor's house, and it ended up that neighbor was a roof contractor and a roof repairsman. So he was able to help them, and the message from that was we need to switch our mindset from we need the church to the church needs us and our talents and our experiences and our attributes. And I started thinking about it, and for whatever reason, missions popped into my mind. And when I've been taught that when something pops into your mind that is unrelated to what you're listening to or what you're doing, it's usually a message from the Spirit. So I started thinking about Christian's mission, my elder brother Christian's mission, and how he did, and what experiences he had, what troubles he had. And I started putting myself in those situations, and I realized I think I'd be a pretty good missionary. I have a lot of unique life experiences, and I'm pretty personable, and I feel like I could be a good missionary. But then I started to doubt myself. I started to doubt how many times a day I read my scriptures, how often I say my prayers, how many articles of faith I still have memorized. And I was like, no, I can't do it. And so I put off that thought until the end of the meeting, when the stake president got up and he said, the Lord often gives us promptings. When we listen and act upon those promptings, we will be blessed, and the lives of those we've been asked to serve will be blessed. If we ignore those promptings or put them off, we often lose the opportunity. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. That was the first time I've ever heard God talking to me. Growing up, my parents would always say, pray about this. And I would sit there and say, God doesn't answer my prayers. Why would I pray if he doesn't answer my prayers? And I started freaking out, and the second I got out of that meeting house, I called my dad, and I said, Dad, well, at first it was like 5 minutes of me crying, so he couldn't understand me, but I said, Dad, I think I need to go on a mission. And I was not expecting to say that at all. It just came out of my mouth. And he said, wow. And my mom from the background goes, what? She was really confused. They were both really confused, because my entire life I'd grown up saying, nope, not going on a mission. If someone asked, nope, no way, absolutely not. And I walked him through what happened, and he said, wow. And I said, yeah, God just really slapped me upside the head. But it doesn't always happen that way. I've noticed, since that one event, there's been a lot more subtle promptings, but I was fighting it. I was fighting that knowledge that I got to my answer. How can I better align my life with God? Go on a mission. I was fighting that. And at the time I was applying for housing with 2 of my friends, And I was having a hard time, and I went to Renee, my sister's, and Austin, my brother-in-law's house, and Austin gave me a blessing. And in that blessing, he said, you have 2 paths ahead of you. No matter which one you choose, you will not miss out on any blessings. And if you start to go down a path that God doesn't necessarily, or that God doesn't think is the best one for you, he will let you know. And as I was submitting the application for my housing, I got this really sinking feeling on my chest. And it was just a big, I'm not supposed to do this. I'm not supposed to live here next semester. I'm supposed to go on a mission. And again, there were a lot of different reassurances. There were some things that I was working through, and I asked God to give me reassurance. And he has given me a lot of reassurance. My dad had tickets to State Conference Sunday, Saturday, and the women's session, I think. And for whatever reason, I decided to take one of my roommates to the Saturday morning session. And in that Saturday morning session, that was the one session that they were talking about missions the entire time. So I've just gotten constant reassurance after that one, I need to go on a mission. And it's been great. But again, it's not always that blatantly obvious. Sometimes you recognize it later. Sometimes it's quiet, and sometimes we have to listen to it. But I feel that not everyone gets as big of a answer as I did, but I also think that if I didn't get if I didn't get that answer that was that big, then I would not have accepted it. So God really tailors different aspects of answers towards you, because I am very stubborn, and he knew that, and he knew I needed constant reassurance, so he gave me that big one and then little ones. But yeah, that's the basic general gist of how I decided to go on a mission, and it all started with me asking a question. Sometimes the answer is no, though, and I have friends who that answer was no for. They were not supposed to go on a mission, and that's okay. But I do think that we all need to get that answer from God before we make any decisions. But yeah, that's my story. Let me know if you want to know more, because there's a lot more. But okay. Bye, Andersons.
So that's Heidi. She's amazing. She's going to be a wonderful missionary to the people in Alaska, and we're so excited for her. So is that same spirit moving upon us today? I think so. Let me finish with a few verses in Nehemiah. Really cool. So in the first chapter of Nehemiah, verse 4, it says, "And it came to pass, when I heard these words, that I sat down and wept and mourned certain days, and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven." So what happened here is Nehemiah, he got word that the people that had moved back to Jerusalem and that were rebuilding the temple, that they were struggling, that they didn't have walls to protect them, and that their gates had been burned down, and that they were in a rough place. And he felt for them, and he, was weeping and praying to the Lord, and just, you could tell that the Spirit was with him, and that he was being moved upon to figure out a way to help. And then in Nehemiah chapter 2, well, before we get here, so what happens is the king notices that Nehemiah is he's healthy and everything, but for some reason he's so sad. And Nehemiah tells him what's going on, and the Spirit moves upon the king to let Nehemiah go back and help the Jews build their wall and their gates. And so in chapter 2, this is the story of going back. It says, "And I arose in the night, I and some few men with me, neither told I any man what my God had put in my heart to do at Jerusalem." So the Lord put it in his heart to go back and to do this. And then in verse 17 it says, "Then said I unto them, Ye see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lieth in waste, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. Come, let us build up the wall of Jerusalem, that we be no more a reproach. And then I told them of the hand of my God, which was good upon me, as also the king's words that had spoken unto me. And they said, Let us rise up and build. So they strengthened their hands for this good work." So I love that. Let us rise up and build. I guess my question for us this week would be, what is the Spirit of the Lord doing in our hearts? What is He telling us to do so that we can rise up and build the kingdom? Let's find out what those things are. Is it to serve a mission? Is it to move? Is it to do come follow me? Whatever it is, let's be in a position to where we can feel that Spirit and be willing to do what the Lord causes us to do. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.